Brethren, the beauty of walking with the voice of God is that it gives you assurance that you are not alone. The voice of God is the presence of God. When God speaks in our lives, we know that He is present. We know that He is there. But when the voice of God ceases to speak, that means that we are alone. So, the power of having the voice of God is the assurance that you feel within you that I'm not alone. Because in this world that we are walking, when God says in the book of Romans that He predestined us, we cannot walk in a journey that someone predestined, but we are not having Him. We need to have Him because He's the one who knows every mountain. He's the one who knows every river to be crossed. And He's the one who continuously infuses in us strength to climb those mountains and to cross those rivers. Fires may be made in our way. Dangerous things may be found. Obstacles may be found. But whatever it is, like Zerubbabel, you can stand and say, you mountain, you shall be a valley. Why? Because you understand that I'm not alone. And the voice of God is that assurance that you are not alone. If you read the book of Philippians chapter 4, verse 18, I like how this version puts it. Philippians 4, verse 18, it says, I have strength for all things in Christ who empowers me. I'm ready for anything and equal to anything through Him who infuses inner strength into me. I'm self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency. This is powerful. I'm self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency. When Christ is in you, and you can only determine that Christ is in you when you hear His voice. When He is silent, then He is not there. Because the presence of the Lord is marked by His voice. So when God is there, here, Paul is saying to the Philippians church that I can do all things because Christ infuses the strength within me. And you can feel the strength of God by hearing His voice. It is His voice that gives you assurance that you are not alone in this journey that you are walking. And not only so, when you have the voice of God and you have assurance that you are not alone, it also, you find courage, you find boldness in doing anything that God assigns you to do. Because the voice of God tells you that it is not you who is doing it, but it is Christ. This verse, it says, I'm self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency, which means when God is in me and He assigns me to do anything, it means it is Him who is going to do it. One time Paul says to Timothy that in the house of God there are vessels, some of honor, some of dishonor. A vessel is something that is used. A vessel contains. A vessel, is just a container. And what you contain is what 1 John 4:4 says, that greater is He that is in you than the one that is in the world. Which means when you open your mouth to speak as a vessel of honor, it is not you who is speaking. The voice of God speaks through you and mountains, they melt. The voice of God speaks into you and fires are quenched. Because it's the fire that quenches all fires. So when we have the voice of God, we have assurance that we are not alone. It is as I'm ministering right now that I feel that may you, as you're listening to me, desire to have the voice of God. Because the challenges that we are meeting today and the disappointments that we face in life every day is that we hear God's voice. Most of us, we hear God when He speaks. But when He speaks, we just do not desire to hear more. Yet He wants every day to take you step by step so that you're not disappointed, so that you're not discouraged, so that you do not fail any mission that He assigns you to do. So when you have the voice of God, you also are assured of victory. You also are assured of, conquering because you have this courage. You have this boldness that it is not me who is doing this mission, but it is Christ who is in me, who is doing everything that He has assigned me to do. I want to read the book of Joshua chapter 1. Joshua chapter 1, if you read from verse number 1 to verse number 9. Joshua chapter 1, this time when the Lord speaks unto Joshua, He starts by telling Joshua that I know my servant is no more, right? When God is speaking to Joshua, He tells Joshua on verse 1 that the Lord said to Joshua, now that my servant is dead. That is verse number 2. Joshua 1 verse 2. Now that my servant is dead. The Lord is not ignorant of your fears. The Lord is not ignorant of your worries, your pains, your tears. He is speaking to a Joshua who is in pain, that he has lost Moses. And God comes and says, he actually affirms that I know Moses is normal. This is the voice of God that is ministering. He is not just coming to say, please be comforted, but he starts by saying, I know you are grieving. I know you're worried. I know you're confused because your leader is no more. But if you read from verse 2, there going downwards, he goes on to, to give courage in his word. It is in the word of the Lord that we find our courage and our boldness. He goes on to say, so now arise. I know my servant is dead, but now arise. The voice of God picks you up. The voice of God takes you from the pit of discouragement. The voice of God gives you strength to gather yourself up and begin to move. Because he says to Joshua that I know my servant is dead, but pick yourself up, arise, take his place, right? Go over this Jordan, you and all these people, into the land which I am giving to them as the Israelites, every place upon which the sole of your foot shall tread, that I have given to you as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness, this Lebanon, that's number 4. Verse 5 says, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life, as I was with Moses. So I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Verse 6 says, be strong, be confident, and of good courage, for you shall cause these people to inherit the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Then verse 7 repeats again, only you be strong and very courageous, right? And verse 8 speaks about the book of the law, that ye should meditate upon day and night. And verse 9, he says, have not I commanded you, be strong, right? Be vigorous and very courageous. Be not afraid, neither be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. This is a powerful introduction to ministry. The Lord is holding Joshua's hand. He's grieving, he's in pain. I'm speaking to somebody right now who is saying, you don't know my situation, but God knows your situation. And when he comes, he does not hide the fact that he knows Joshua is grieving. He knows Joshua is in a very painful situation. And he actually begins by saying on verse 2, now that my servant Moses is dead, he's speaking to Joshua now, the successor, to say, I know Moses is not there, but arise, stand up and begin to move. So what are we saying today? The voice of God gives us courage. The voice of God gives you boldness. If you come back to the scriptures that I've just read, verse 1 up to verse 9 of Joshua chapter 1, many times the Lord speaks, he actually says, I am going. It's beautiful. There's power when God says, I myself. There's a time when God speaks to Moses in the book of Exodus and says, my presence will go with you. And he says to Joshua, as I was with Moses, I will be with you. I promise you everywhere, the sole of your foot shall tread upon, I have given you. So, you cannot fail to be bold when God is speaking so powerfully that I, the Lord, I am going to be with you. You are going to possess the land of Canaan. So the voice of God, if my brethren, you could hear me, let's desire the voice of God. Let's yearn to hear God. Because why? We are given assurance that we are not alone. This world, as it is, all the shakings, all the evil things that are coming every day, we can only conquer when we have assurance that greater is he who is in us than the one that is in the world. And we become so bold, we become so courageous to do an assignment that he tells us to do. May the good Lord continue to bless you as you're going to pursue and desire to hear the voice of the Lord. Be blessed.